Hey everyone, and welcome to the final video in my series of deep dive explorations. Well, the final KH1 video, I'll be moving on to the other games after this. Now, the last place we have to visit in this game is End of the World, a desolate and eerie land where the last remnants of worlds gather, and the final boss takes place. Let's get exploring. Okay, here we are at the Gate to the Dark, and this is a very small room. I can't turn the camera or anything, because it literally just is this little rock that you're inside of when you first walk out. But it certainly sets the stage. You can see out and you can see the vast emptiness out there and the music playing, although first time you come to this world there's no music playing while you're in this lower section, and that definitely is very effective, but I've mentioned that before so I'm not going to go on about that. We can also get a look at the colour scheme of this place. Very purple, obviously. Purple is kind of the colour of darkness in Kingdom Hearts, so it makes sense. But there's no point lingering in here too long. Let's move out and have a look at the final dimension. So this is probably one of the most memorable things about this world, the final dimension. Interesting name as well, because in KH3 we get the final world, and in a way they're kind of similar, with the final world being a vast expanse of water like this and sky, with it all reflected in the water, and the fact that the final world is where people will go before they die. They sort of linger on, and here is where worlds come once they've been taken by the heartless. So it's definitely quite cool when we look back at it now. As you can see, it's a huge stretch of water with these tiny little bits of rock with some snow on them, which is interesting. And you can see actually some of the rocks embed down through the water, and we have these ripples coming out of them. Kind of like with Hollow Bastion as well, we can actually walk on the water. So that's another recurring thing here, the ability to walk on water. But as we'll see, there's a bit more to this place than meets the eye. The atmosphere here is just amazing, the orbs coming down, and just, well, the huge vast emptiness of it. Like I said, the colours, this purple very ominous sky, and the water, the little sparkles of colour that you see on these edges of these rocks here. It's all very cool. It's what you can do when you make an area that looks very simple when you first look at it, but it's so effective. The music playing is of course a version of Destitute, which is just a callback to the start of the game and is extremely fitting for this place. And you can actually hear tiny little bits of Dearly Beloved in it as well. I want to pay attention to the footsteps as well, because if you see they've got these little sparkles coming out of them, which I think is pretty cool. And of course they make a wet noise because this whole place is water. And look how perfectly reflective it is. It's just great. Here we have one of the little rocks, and we can go on and we can see there's another one, but we're hitting these invisible walls that's stopping us from moving in any direction. Seems a bit strange, doesn't it? But of course, as everyone knows by now I'm sure, there's a reason for this. So I've gone back in time, so to speak, and we can see when we first come here these huge orbs can come down, or it can happen when you open a chest, and you end up in this canyon. But as you can see, the chests are there, and the general shape is actually the shape that you're running into with the invisible walls. So rather they're not so much invisible walls, but they're these walls of kind of like crystally rock looking stuff. And you can see the snow on the ground, of course. And behind us there is actually the hole that we came through, so it's quite interesting the way they've done this. Sora is always technically in this canyon, but you don't see any of it other than tiny pieces when you're not in a battle. As we can see, there's a chest ahead there that we can get in the other version of this place. And I like the lightning effects outside of the arena. There's all these lightning effects. It's quite cool. There's even some little twigs, like little branches or something of trees sticking up on the outsides. Very mysterious and quite creepy in a lot of ways. When we look behind in the final dimension, we can see how far we've come. And for some reason I have a glitch. I don't know if this is the Xbox version or if it's just the remix version, but there's a glitch where the rock face goes all stripy and like with these blue stripes. It looks very unnatural. I don't think that's supposed to do that. And in front of us is a big mysterious light. At the end of this area, a big orb comes down and we end up in a behemoth boss fight. And we end up in this arena which we don't see otherwise, which is basically the same thing with the reflected sky. But it's just completely empty. There's nothing else we can see here, other than this boundary that we're kept inside of. One difference though is that the sky is completely black above us. With that out of the way, we end up in the giant crevasse, and true to its name, this is a very large area. And it's the most platform heavy area in End of the World. Most of the world here isn't really that heavy on platforming, it's mostly a linear sort of straight shot. But this place actually does have some stuff, and some chests to find. And it's a really cool looking place. We've got these crystals, or gummy blocks perhaps, scattered around the place, and these wire things going across. Hard to tell what they're supposed to be, but there's definitely an organic look to this place and End of the World in general. They're sort of webbed walls that look a little bit flesh-like in some ways, a little bit disturbing, and we see certain areas like at the back there's a kind of webbed look, and even on the side of the wall here, a little web on the side. And we still have the snowy kind of landscape to walk around on. If we look over this way, it just looks very eerie. It keeps on going. No wonder they say giant crevasse, because look at that, we can't even go over there, but you can see how far the trench goes. Quite intimidating and gives me a slight sense of dread. Now a lot of the objects here actually change in colour and shift, so these crystals we can see go from green to a sort of red, and the wires that go across, they also do that. It's quite a pretty area in a slightly disturbing way, and there's also some mist effects going on here as well, as you can see. Look at Donald down there struggling. How did he even get down there? Donald, what are you doing? Just shimmy across, come on. I'll go pick him up in a second. Obviously this area is meant for gliding, but you can do things like shimmy along these ledges or jump up some platforms if you want to get back up. It's easy to get down, it's not quite as easy to get back up in this area. So you do kind of want to get the chests as you go down, it's the easiest thing to do. There's even some vine things to climb down. I hesitate to call them vines, I'm not really sure what they're supposed to be, but just more end of the world weirdness. And we can glide into these sections where some heartless will appear and we have to fight them and unblock the hole in the ground. Just looking up we can see how far we've come and how big this area really is. Right at the bottom we have more of the snowy texture, and we've got these lines going throughout it, and there's these little glimmering sections on them which I think are quite cool to look at. I appreciate that this world is quite unique. It's not just, oh, here's spooky area, it's here's spooky area, but with some character, and some stuff that is genuinely kind of beautiful in some ways. Now we can jump down into this pit and we'll end up in the world Terminus, which is a very interesting place. So let's just have a look at this place. It's this huge ring with spikes all over it, and these sections of it, little sections that you can go on all throughout it, like sort of spiraling down as well. And each one houses a room of a world, of course. Also like the sky here, there's a bit more red in with the purple. The vast kind of chasm, void, abyss, whatever you want to call it, just the hugeness of this place is quite eerie and spooky. I love it. And the sides of each of these terminal areas even have these spikes which also look kind of like teeth to me, just slightly in the way they're designed. Another example of the organic nature of End of the World. These little balls of light are going to take us across to each area, so we'll go on the first one and we'll start looking at each room that's in the world Terminus, because they're all rooms from worlds already visited in the game. Now when you first come here, if the pillar is blue instead of purple, it means you didn't seal the keyhole in that world, so you have to go into it and deal with the enemies. If it's purple, you can just skip past it, but you may as well go into them because they've got treasures. It certainly looks very dangerous, this big mass just protruding outwards. Also another look at the skybox and how chaotic it looks with it swirling around very quickly. So the rep we have for Traverse Town here is the 3rd district. As we can see, these blocks are here. These are the same ones that I used for the guard armor boss fight in here, so it's a nice way to reuse it. Each of these worlds is just an arena for Heartless, so you don't really get to see much, and usually there's nothing different about them. As we can see, this all looks the same, there's nothing really to interact with. It really is just a battle arena. Wonderland has its rabbit hole as the area here. Interesting choice, but I suppose it's because it's quite a contained area. There's not really too much to go and see or do, and you can quite easily leave through this door. It actually plops you through the hole in the first part, and you have to leave through a different door, so it's different to most of the World Terminus rooms. So Olympus has the Colosseum entrance area, and there's a little bit that's different about this, and that's that it's set at night. Of course, using the night skybox from the arena fights, sometimes it's set at night, right? And we can see all these stars above us, and there's a big circle of blackness around it. Something tells me that those stars aren't there on the arena version at night. I can't quite remember, and they've been taken from Traverse Town or something and put in there instead. That's why we have this big black line going around it. Maybe it's something like that. But otherwise Olympus isn't really any different. You can't interact with anything like the boards here, the scoreboards. It's just an arena as usual. It's just interesting, instead of the actual arena of Olympus Coliseum, they've chosen this room, I guess because it's a bit more memorable. Oh right, and because it actually has a door. Yeah, that makes sense. Deep Jungle has the clearing area where we fight Sabor, so it's another arena used, and we've got boxes back there that stop us from leaving. That might be the closest Goofy's ever got in my face in this whole series. Oof. Agrabah's an interesting one because it's kind of like the pot centipede fight in that we can go through all the streets without being blocked by the room transitions. We can just go through them more freely. Now, despite that, they have blocked off all the upper entrances, all the side alleyways and everything, so you really can't do much other than just go forward and back. One thing definitely to note about these areas is it's quite creepy to hear End of the World's music playing inside these Disney worlds, instead of the usually more chirpy or at least less sinister sounding music that we usually get here. That's definitely something that's quite effective. So much so that KH3 kind of repeated the same thing with its endgame. There's no Terminus for Monstro because he's not really a world, he doesn't have a keyhole, so the next one is Atlantica. Atlantica is just this section of the calm depths. Obviously it's quite a limited area, and we can't leave via the current in the middle now because there's a big boulder blocking the way at the top. One interesting thing to note though is that the water effect isn't here like it is in the actual world, so it doesn't look like it's shifting around or anything. I'm guessing because that's like a filter laid over the camera in Atlantica, whereas here at the End of the World we don't really need to have it, so quite interesting to see though. Speaking of interesting, the location for the Halloween Town terminus is Oogie's torture chamber, despite the fact it doesn't really exist anymore. It's pretty much the same as what I showed in his boss fight in that deep dive, but there are some differences. The main one being that the entire roulette floor has been raised up. As you can see the middle pillar now, we can just see the top of it because the roulette floor has been raised up. We can't see underneath, we can't see the traps like the cowboys that shoot at you. It's all raised up, so you could simply jump up to Oogie if you were fighting him in this version of it. And it is nice that there's a way we can see this room again because it's obviously inaccessible once the boss is done. Of course we also have Neverland, and this one's quite interesting actually because it's a little bit larger than some of the others. So of course we have the main ship and we can't fly here. I instinctively tried to fly, but of course we can't, we're in the End of the World. But everything seems about the same, but as you can see these trapdoors are now open and we can jump straight into those rooms, no loading screens. It's the only time the trapdoors are actually open, and that's definitely something noteworthy. Once we jump in, the doors all lock and we go to defeat the enemies inside. But there's a little bit more than just this initial area, and this is something I only just found out, I think. Because of course you can go into this back room, but what I didn't know is actually you can go up. You can go to the corridor above. Again, no loading screen, it's all just one instance. And you can even go as far as this room here and fight some more enemies. I don't think I've seen that before, I really don't think I have. It's interesting. Either I don't remember it, or I just haven't come up to this part. And of course we have the 100 Acre Wood terminus, and this, true to its nature, is completely peaceful, it's serene, it's still a bit weird that the End of the World music is playing, but we have a save point here and it's very fitting for this world. It's just the clearing area, there's nothing different from what I can tell. Now we can see how far we've come, and there's even some slight drawings or some design on the rock face there, probably indicating that that's where the chasm was that we were in earlier, the giant crevasse. Lastly, we have this portal leading to Chernobog's boss room, but of course, to begin with, there's usually a big fiery pillar here, and that leads to a very interesting room in Hollow Bastion, one we didn't see when we actually were in Hollow Bastion, and one we can't come back to. But of course, with the power of different saves, we'll go back into it. Of course, this room would get the most dangerous, the most fiery, the most evil looking pillar. And inside, well, we come out of this portal, a very chaotic and sinister looking portal, mind you. I like that it's multicolored though, and not just a dark portal that just looks purple. And on the other side we have a huge heartless emblem that's just floating, blocking our passage through the corridor. It's a bit strange why there's just a big heartless emblem. I don't really know why it's not something physical blocking our way, why they did it like this. Who knows? It's interesting to say the least. You could maybe interpret it as the heartless itself is not letting you go anywhere else. It's like it's funneling you into this room. But inside the room itself we have more of these dark portals scattered around the corners. Some blue pipes, which is a bit different to what we usually see in Hollow Bastion. Those are usually bronze pipes, but we've got some blue ones here. In fact, this room is quite different to the rest of Hollow Bastion in a lot of ways. We see some assets that we don't usually see, including these cone things at the sides of the door here. Like, what are these? What are these? They're just very random. And above we have this, well, it looks like stars, doesn't it? It looks like space. And I think that makes sense given what we come to know about this machine. And of course the machine itself, this is the Ark. At the time of KH1 it didn't really have a name or anything, it was kind of left as a bit of a mystery. But now we do know what it is, it's the Ark. It appeared in the mobile game, and it appears in Melody of Memory as well. And it's some sort of device or machine that can transport people through space, perhaps even through time. It's very, very creepy in a lot of ways. Look at the human outlines that are inside the pods. I mean, whoa, that's kind of disturbing. While the pipes going up into the top section, we see some of Hollow Bastion pinkish steam again. Bubbles going through these pipes. More of this sort of Magitech thing from Hollow Bastion on the front with this console. It doesn't really look computery. It looks more steampunkish. The windows on the pods look like hearts, sure, but they also look a bit like thalasser shells. Now, thalasser shells are ones you can find on Destiny Islands. It's what Kairi made her lucky charm out of, and she said that it was used by seafarers to ensure a safe voyage. Now, this arc is what Kairi gets put in, and she goes on a kind of voyage to Destiny Islands by Xehanort. This is all in the KH1 secret reports as well. He says how he's found a girl and he's going to use her to try and find a Keyblade wielder, and we get more about that later on in the series. So I think this could very well be an intentional thing. It's pretty cool either way, and this whole room and this machine is all very cool. It's creepy, disturbing, it's very mysterious. I just find it so interesting. I found it really interesting back in the day, and the message that reads on the terminal, it's just, this sort of stuff is so cool. This is the stuff that I really love in Kingdom Hearts. Anyway, back in the present timeline now, when we jump into the hole, we end up in the Evil Grounds. Now this is where Chernobog's boss is, of course, and there's not much to it. It's the volcano in the middle, and just a huge swirling mass around us, and we can fly in here, which is cool. It's very chaotic. It's a very good stage for a boss battle. Not a lot to say in terms of details because there's not much there. And no, you can't go right down to the bottom and touch like the bottom part. It does stop you just about here, stops you here. A little bit unfortunate, but it doesn't really matter. Now then, we can descend into the crater, and this is a little bit interesting. So, one, I like to imagine Chernobog all stuffed in here, but two, there's a door at the top here. But if we go down, and yeah, by the way, this is pretty normal looking. It's just some purplish rocks and some little bits of yellow stuff stringing down. I say normal looking, but you know, it's end of the world stuff like you expect. And it does look quite volcanic, especially the colours. But at the bottom there's another door, and this will actually lead us into the volcanic crater, which I'm sure most people know. See, we can go back up, and we lead back up to here. But you can also, if you like, go through this door, and this will take you into a top area of the volcanic crater. Again, you go down, you can't fly in here though. After a lengthy journey down, you end up at the bottom, and this door will lead to the same room of the volcanic crater that we just saw. So for some reason, there's two ways into here. You can go straight down the crater, or you can go across into the volcanic crater, and then go down. It's odd. I don't really know why exactly they have this. It's just a really random piece of level design. One maybe theory is that the cut room, called the Crumbling Island, maybe that would have been accessible here, but I'm not sure because the Crumbling Island kind of looks like Destiny Island, so I think that would have been in the homecoming part, right in the final boss area. And that would have been, by the way, a Sora and Riku battle, just before the proper Ansem battle. So I'm not really sure why it's like this, but anyway, moving on, we have the volcanic crater. And this is, of course, as I've mentioned in another video, this is where the remnants of some of the worlds that we don't get to go to have ended up in End of the World. Particularly the worlds of the princesses that we see in the game, like Cinderella and Snow White. It's quite disturbing to see classic Disney worlds reduced to, well, just this, to just a corridor of just bits of land and barely any remnants left, some stone structures there, and Maleficent's thorns you can see around this one. There's all sorts of little details like these crystals on the wall, or the little shafts of light we can see above us. The second room is even smaller and more narrow. We've got these bits sticking up out of the ground that look like dead plants or something. Fuzzy patches on the wall that kind of look like they've been erased. We see the trees from Snow White here, of course. And this is something I mentioned way back on a video, but this here is a castle, and I'll just show it again just for the sake of anyone who might not have seen that. It's King Stefan's castle from Sleeping Beauty. It's literally this still from the movie, and they've just changed it a bit, you know, they've made it look like a silhouette, they've edited it, but you can see it's the exact same shape. It's very creepy though, seeing a huge castle reduced, or just, I don't know about reduced because there's actually another one on the wall over here, but just seeing it look like this, just a splatter on the wall, you know, it's very effective I think, and it's a nice little Easter egg. The final room of the volcanic crater is the smallest yet, and it's in complete ruins. It just looks like chaos. There's bits of logs and some trees on the wall, but otherwise it's just a mess of colours. This is the point where things are really becoming destroyed. Now these rooms are a bit odd, how things are just kind of planted on the walls. It's probably because of technical limitations. They might have shown things a bit more realistically, if they could have, but maybe they couldn't. Or it's just an art choice, I don't know. It's effective either way I think, even if it does look a bit strange. Here we have Linked Worlds, and the name kind of implies it might be some sort of heart of End of the World, where everything's kind of linked together. Not a lot to say about this room. The side spikes kind of look like tusks, adding to that organic feel that End of the World has. And it's complete blackness above us. Like, this is one of the biggest, just complete black voids in the game. You can't even see anything up there. The ground is also this very alien-like texture, but otherwise not a lot of detail to look at. This is, of course, where you fight a huge amount of Heartless at the end of the game. It's a real pain in the ass for playing on level 1, from what I've heard. And here's the heart symbol that will lead us into the final rest, the final area of End of the World. Above, we've got these really cool lights with these little like dust effects going on in them. I think these look really nice, and it's just like a little light in the darkness. It's something that makes the final rest probably the most nice area in this world, even though it's still kind of creepy. But you know, you've got these fountains. You can take a shower if you want to, or you can take a drink maybe. And it really is like a final stop. And then we have the door they have to open, the door we saw at the start of the game, a very important door for Kingdom Hearts. And that's it for End of the World. Except it's not, because I'm going to look at the final boss now. We're still kind of in End of the World, right? So I think it's worth doing. And to begin with, we're in a room called Homecoming, a very apt name because, of course, we're back on Destiny Islands. Very powerful stuff to come back to the start of the game. Here we are at the end, with the End of the World music playing. It's a great place to have the final boss. It's very limited, there's not a whole lot we can do. We can't go through the door to the other side of the island. If we go up here, we can see the trees are gone, and indeed the bridge is gone to the outcropping island, and all the trees there are gone except for the Palpu tree. We can't glide over to there, there's invisible walls. It's pretty limited what you can do here, you can't really walk around very much. The pool of water and the waterfall that was here before is now just completely dry. And when we approach the secret place, Ansem will appear and this whole world will get torn up. We can see the foliage is stained purple and it's all ripped apart. It's quite sinister and definitely disturbing to see happen to your home island. The land is all torn up as well, it's all cracked. And we can explore even less now, of course, because a lot of it's just gone. We can even see inside the shack. One thing that was kind of interesting to me is how in the cutscene the sea turns purple, but then when we're actually there in game, there's no sea at all, it's just blue void. I'm going to guess that it may be raised up, like maybe we're on the floating island and the purple sea's below us. Either that or it turned purple and then disappeared, which is a bit random, but hey, maybe it happened. Even worse, the centre of the island just completely splits in two and we get all this torn up land. We see some of the End of the World webbing kind of stuff here, we see little bits of light, we see foliage. I really like how it's torn up, almost like paper, it just shows how strong the darkness is. And I'll take advantage of this dark side fight just to look around a little bit. But honestly, you've kind of seen all you need to see now, I think. We see some blue lines on the floor. But otherwise, that's about it. Let's move on to the very last thing I want to show, and that's the World of Chaos.
Behold the endless abyss. Within it lies the heart of all worlds. Kingdom Hearts.
It's old news by this point, most people probably already know, but you can see the Kingdom Hearts moon behind the door there, looking silhouetted and quite creepy.
Glimmer of light. From those dark depths are all hearts born. Even yours. Darkness conquers all worlds!
So, the World of Chaos. Now, I can't remember where I heard or saw this, but I think I saw that this was supposed to be more of a level at the end of the game, but that didn't really come to pass due to time constraints or something, and we ended up with just this boss. It would certainly explain why it's called World of Chaos, but we can still take a look at the design of the boss anyway. And it's a huge space battleship thing that Ansem has fused himself with. Throughout the fights we can go into these special rooms called Portals of Darkness. In here we've got shadows and then dark balls and then invisibles, and they literally are just completely pitch black room with a Heartless emblem on the floor. It's quite effective to see the Heartless all just kind of silhouetted and very hard to see. It certainly fits with what's going on here. So let's fly out as far as we can and have a proper look at the battleship. And it's funny, when you fly it all this way, it kind of looks small, doesn't it? It looks kind of stubby. Like maybe there should be more of a back to it, I don't know. But anyway, that aside, it's very weird looking, isn't it? Like, you look at this thing and what is this? Well, I kind of see it as a sort of Lovecraftian kind of thing, like eldritch creature kind of thing. It's got all this flesh for a start. It's all flesh, right? It's all kind of this disgusting, Now it looks kind of cartoonish, that's why it doesn't look too bad, because it's obviously a Disney thing, they can't make it look too gory. Here's the face, look, we can even see inside the mouth there. But yeah, like this thing is really weird looking. And it's covered in faces. I'm going to show a few faces as I go, but you can actually land on it. So we can land on this front part here. And it even makes this scrouchy noise when you walk on it, which is just more indicating of this organic nature of this. It's pretty creepy. Over here we have this wide part with faces on it, and I'm getting knocked back by the thing at the top annoyingly, but I'm still trying to show as much as I can. All the different colours, especially red and pink, and these definitely look like veins or some sort of blood vessels, don't they? There's also a lot of bones on this, or it looks like bones anyway. If we go around the back here, we see these sticking out. These look a bit like maybe ribs or something sticking out. Definitely quite horrifying if it didn't look so silly. And here we've got more faces, like look at that. And a skull there. Even down at the bottom we have these faces poking out. On top of it is of course the Guardian, who's now evolved to look very, very different. He's got these rings around his neck as well. Yeah, he's really leveled up. Then once we save Goofy, we have to deal with the face. The face is another portal in which we can save Donald, and it will fall off once we're done with that. Behind where the face was is just like the insides of it. It's just literally just been ripped off. Inside the room with the core, we've got loads and loads of faces. The core's face itself. We have skulls everywhere. We have these ones. We have some with spikes coming out of their forehead. We have some which seem to have kind of like lights on top of them. We have the ones at the back here. This whole thing is covered in faces. I didn't count how many there were, but there's a lot. I think that's all we really need to know. It's a big fleshy mass with faces all over it. All different colours, pulsating stuff, organic looking. Yeah, World of Chaos is weird and I kind of love it. I really love it. As much as it might look a bit cartoony and probably could look worse for sure. We have to remember it's a Disney game, so they can't make it look too gory, otherwise that rating's going to be bumped up and I'm not going to allow that. But to be honest, the fact they managed to make something so satanic looking, well, it's pretty good. It's pretty well done. I have a separate video about this anyway, but this is what Ansem's The Great Darkness attack looks like from behind. And when we're done smacking at Ansem's giant torso, we can go back to the final rest and talk a little bit about End of the World. So that's it. The final world of KH1. The final kind of gauntlet in a way. There's a lot of heartless to fight, but there's not really a lot of world to explore, right? You just kind of go through it linearly. Now there's a lot of detail. There's loads of detail, as you can see from this video. So I do quite like how detailed it is and just how interesting everything is, the art style, and all the little mechanics like having a canyon that you can't see. It's definitely quite a unique thing to do, and the world terminus of course as well. But in terms of level design, there's not a lot here. It's mostly just linear rooms. There's the giant crevasse which has some platforming, but otherwise Hollow Bastion really is the final proper dungeon, and this feels like just a final fight you have to do, just this stretch. Rather than a proper world that you spend a lot of time in, it's just an extended final boss almost, right? Now, despite the lack of level design, and despite the fact that it feels like maybe there could have been a bit more here that was cut, I still really like this world. The atmosphere is just amazing. Like I said, the art is amazing. Just the whole thing is just got so much character. It's so creepy and eerie and well done. I really like this world. Hollow Bastion may be my favourite, but this is still definitely up there. And with that, I'm done for KH1 Explorations. The series is over. There's going to be one more video, which is going to be like a little recap of everything I've found. All the stuff that I didn't already know and that I've found out with these videos. So that'd be a final little conclusion to these videos. And then I'll be moving on to, well, Castle Oblivion. I'm going to do that from Chain of Memories first. And then I'll go on to KH2. So if you're interested in seeing more of that stuff, of course, there's all the links in the description and all that stuff. You know, I don't need to say much more than that. But as always, thanks for watching.